software now. Okay, so into Revit. Okay, you may see in Revit, when you go into add-ins at the top, there is an IES, Integrated Environmental Solutions plugin. Now, that is available on the university machines, but you're not going to have that on your own machines. I'm not really going to use it. IES, I'm afraid you can't download it for free. There is a student version, student license, which is £50. To be honest, I would just advise, just use it on the university computers. Okay, you're not going to be using it very much. It's not worth spending money on it. I don't even think there's a trial. You can check that. There might be a 30-day trial. I'm not sure, but it's available on all university computers. Okay, and as with a lot of university software, you have to go into the software center to install it if it's not already been installed. But it is available now on all university computers. Okay. So I mean, I wouldn't buy it. It doesn't work on Mac. It's PC only. It's expensive. If you buy the full version, it's very expensive as well. Okay. So we've got our Revit file, and we need to get this geometry into IES, and we're just going to do this quite simply. Okay, so if we go to the Revit button, export, GBXML. Okay, GBXML is a kind of universal energy file, means of transferring geometry from software to software. So we'll use that. We get this dialog box. Most of the settings will already be set, so you don't really need to change them, to be honest. So you can look at those settings, but they're already correct. Next. And it's going to save that as an XML file. Okay, I've already saved it, so I'm not going to do it again. And then that's it. In terms of Revit, you're finished. Okay, that's the end of the line for Revit and climate-based daylighting. So I'm just going to shut Revit down to help my computer out. Okay, then we go into IES, and I'm going to open a new, let me just explain. I'm going to open a new project. Okay, that's the first thing in IES that you need to do. When you create a new project, IES will automatically create a folder structure on your hard drive. So it's generally a better way of working. Okay, so blank project, you can use a template, but we're just going to open a blank project. Okay, so need to give it a name. So that's going to open a blank IES file. Okay, so this is IES. Now, do you remember at the beginning of this course, I showed you that slide inside the Jumbo Jet with all the buttons? Okay, we're in the Jumbo Jet now. Okay, but you don't need to don't touch the buttons. Okay, imagine you're cruising along your Jumbo Jet. Only touch the buttons that you know what they do, and you can get by. Okay, it is a very complex piece of software. I don't think it's designed terribly well in terms of helping you out. There's so much in it. There's lots of places to go wrong, but we're just going to use it for a few operations, and that's all. Okay, we're not going to try and be experts in IES. We're just going to use some of the tools. Okay, so we've obviously got it's an empty file, we've got nothing in, so we want to import our XML file. So we go to this third button along from the left, which says import XML. And we can't do anything until we locate our file. So there's the XML file that we saved. Click open on that. Okay, just give that a moment. Now, importing geometry from Revit into IES is quite complex. If you're using it for energy simulation or wind flow simulation, it's really very complex, and there are a number of white papers written about how you need to model in Revit and how you need to do the import. Luckily, for daylighting, it's not so difficult. If you imagine with an energy model, you can't have gaps in your building, you can't have walls that don't meet, but for daylighting, it's actually not quite so critical. So we'll get by for daylighting. If you were trying to import for energy simulation, that would be a much more in-depth process, okay, and we haven't got time to cover that. So we get this little import report, and you can largely ignore it, okay. It does, the yellow is highlighting where there were possible problems in the import. If you were doing energy modeling, they would probably cause you problems, but for daylighting, they don't, because those small gaps are not an issue, okay. So I'm just going to close that. So we've got a little preview of our building. Looks about right. We have got some options: outer shell, shading surfaces. We can click on the shading surfaces, but I find the import process, it very rarely brings the shading surfaces in adequately into IES. The video, the extra resource, shows you how to quickly model shading surfaces back in, okay. It's just, you know, it's just one of the features. In practice, what happens quite a lot, and it happened to me in practice, is our engineers, they simply rebuilt our model in IES. So we gave them the Revit file with the idea being that they could import that into IES. They just threw it away and they started from scratch in IES. And it is a bit of a problem at the moment. Okay, so we're ready to go. We just click on import. Okay. Sorry, I've done that twice there. Why did that? Okay, you can ignore that. So it's going to bring that geometry in a moment. In fact, I've got a slight concern that I brought it in twice by mistake there. That wasn't very good, was it? That will cause us problems. It's clearly, I've already brought it in, I think I've done it twice. Okay. Right. Okay, I think we're okay. Right, so I'll show you a few of the tools to navigate around IES in the time that we've got. So top left, we've got some fairly normal sort of save, file open, file save. Okay, you can play around with those. Then along the top bar here, we've got some basic sort of navigation controls. So we've got, you know, things like zoom out, zoom in, pan, okay, some sort of basic stuff like that. Previous view, next view, and we've got plan, right, left, front, back, axonometric. Says our axonometric. And what you see immediately is it doesn't have a very sort of nice orbit tool. You know, you'd expect now just to be able to right click and pan around. It's not really, doesn't really do that for you. But the axonometric view is fairly useful. Then another useful navigator here, you can choose to just see one of the floors in your building at a time. So I clicked on level 2 there, and I'm 2 floor in that building. Okay, on the far right here, we've got model viewer and model viewer 2. Now that is covered in the video that you've got from this week. So I'm not going to go through it now because there's not time. I mean, you'll see in the video, I don't like it at all. It's a very strange viewer. It looks horrible. And, you know, it's the kind of thing that sometimes engineers would try and give you an image of the building from it, and it just looked dreadful. But, you know, it's there. I mean, I suppose the bottom line is IES really is designed for engineers. Although they are trying to market it as an architect tool as well, it's you know, it's much more based at sort of engineering level. Okay. But anyway, there's some of the basic tools along the top. Bottom left, we can navigate through our rooms. So if I click on a room here, you can see that by clicking on it, it will highlight that room in the model, and it has brought the room names through from Revit. Okay. When you expand one of those rooms, it will then break that down into its constituent parts: floor, wall, ceiling, for example. So you have that level of being able to select individual items. We don't really need to do that. Okay. So we've got our basic geometry in, and we're not, at this stage, I'm not going to show you anything about modeling geometry. That additional video just shows you some basic tools. Okay. And we're not going to attempt to model anything complex, but it does give you the tools to be able to model simple shades, adjacent buildings, or if you just wanted to simply model a room, that video shows you how to do that. Okay, I mean, that is another approach sometimes. If you simply want to simulate one room, just model it in IES in as a very simple zone. That's in the video. Okay. Important setting here is your location, and IES, it's slightly strange, it will use by default the previous location that you had set. So at the moment this says Emily Moore, which is not right. If we double click on that, we can then change our location. So if we click on the wizard, we can search. We click on select. Anywhere in the world, you can find the closest weather data. Okay, you can only choose locations that have weather files. So we've got Sheffield. So we select Sheffield. Height above sea level, you can set that as well. So we click on OK. We've got our daylight saving adjustment that we talked about earlier, 1 hour. So that's all set. Next. Weather data, normally just stick with the ASHRAE database. Okay. Just quickly go through that. Okay, so we've set the weather now. Okay, so you can see that in the location box, it's now changed to Sheffield. Okay, so that is critical because obviously, with climate-based daylight modelling, you need the right data, and the kind of sky conditions you get in Sheffield could be different from a city even just 30 miles away. Okay, so that is quite important. Okay. So we want to now start a simulation. Now in the top left hand menu here, we've got what are called applications. And IES is a slightly funny piece of software where you have to buy each application one at a time. So depending on what you've bought, you will have access to more or less of these applications. Now we've bought them all at university, so you've got them all. Not that you need to use them all. But for climate-based daylight, we're simply going to use Radiance IES. We're not going to use any of the other applications. So if we click on IES, and you'll see that our work environment will change slightly.